Lowery is our Zoom stage manager and music coordinator, and in the sanctuary, Warren, Riley, and Marjorie Abel. The Zoom chat box is available for announcements for those on Zoom. Those who prefer to focus on the service can close it now and catch up later. In the sanctuary, we welcome our members and friends joining us in the sanctuary. I ask that you have a hymnal available to share in the responsive reading number 657 later in the service. Also, there's a bowl at the entry for any donations. Our church-related announcements this morning: the ladies' lunch on Zoom is this Tuesday, April 26th at noon. Please contact Laura Lovelace or let her know later in our conversation time. Remember that game night is each Saturday at 7 p.m. New players are most welcome. And please be sure to check the UUView for opportunities to be together. All events use this same link. Are there any other announcements? Laura, you need to unmute yourself.
Some of you knew Don McCormick. He was a member for a long time. He passed away a couple days ago, and he was in poor health. And his wife, I'm putting Jean's address in the chat in case you want to send cards or anything. They have two homes, one in Scaly Mountain and one in Stone Mountain. And I'll put in this Stone Mountain address.
It'll also be in the view this week for those who don't have time to catch it now or in the sanctuary. So thank you, Laura.
Sure.
Are there any other announcements? Our fellowship is a light for liberal religion in the mountains that values diversity and the richness it brings to our community. Our celebration of diversity is reflected in the variety of our Sunday services. Our service today presents our Universalist heritage. We hope today's service enriches your journey. Our chalice lighting is by Paul Sprecher. We light this chalice to honor the memory of those who have come before us. Kindle flames of wisdom in dark times, willing to challenge orthodoxy even at great personal risk, giving us a legacy of freedom and a love of truth. Our legacy that warms our hearts and lights our path. Our opening words are from Unitarian Universalist minister Peter Rabel, who paraphrased a passage from Deuteronomy 6, verses 10 to 12. He wrote, "We build on foundations we did not lay. We warm ourselves at fires we did not light. We sit in the shade of trees we did not plant. We drink from wells we did not dig. We profit from persons we did not know. We are ever born in community." Church of Chapel Hill, Unitarian Universalist.
Come thou fount of every blessing, to the heart
Our offering words this morning are from Reverend Victoria Weinstein. May again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in history, in mystery, and in miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. All gifts of time, talent, and treasure are deeply appreciated. Tori is Spirit of Life, number 123. The dedication of our gifts. Gifts given in love and hope continue a cycle of love and hope. So may it be. Our responsive reading this morning is 657, led by Marjorie Abril and our friends in the sanctuary.
Responsive reading, and we're going to read the response. Okay. There you are, Bruce.
It matters what we believe. Some beliefs are like walled gardens. They encourage exclusiveness and a feeling of being especially privileged.
Other beliefs are expansive and lead the way into wider and deeper sympathies.
Some beliefs are like shadows, clouding children's days with fears of unknown calamities.
Other beliefs are like sunshine, blessing children with the warmth of happiness.
Some beliefs are divisive, separating the saved from the unsaved, friends from enemies.
Other beliefs are bonds in a world community where sincere differences beautify the pattern.
Some beliefs are like blinders, shutting off the power to choose one's own direction.
Other beliefs are like gateways, opening wide vistas for exploration.
Some beliefs weaken a person's selfhood. They blight the growth of the sourcefulness.
Other beliefs nurture self-confidence and enrich the feeling of personal worth.
Some beliefs are rigid, like the body of death, impotent in a changing world.
Other beliefs are pliable, like the young sapling, ever growing with the upward thrust of life.
Thank you.
Nice. That was nice.
Thank you all for that reading. Our service this morning celebrates our Universalist heritage. In 1803, the Winchester Profession of Faith has had a profound effect on Universalism, Unitarian Universalism, and other liberal denominations for the last 200 plus years. This is the story presented by the Universalist Heritage Foundation, narrated by Richard and Joyce Gilbert.
This is one of the principles of liberal religion in America. The Universalist Heritage Center in Winchester, New Hampshire. Universalist congregations began forming in New England in the late 1770s. By 1794, they extended from Long Island Sound to central Vermont and New Hampshire, and from the Atlantic to Lake Champlain. The majority were in the hill country of central Massachusetts, southern New Hampshire, and southern Vermont. New Hampshire is at the center of this region.
It was in the meeting house here that Universalists gathered in 1803 to draft the Declaration of Faith that became known as the Winchester. This served Universalists for almost a century. It was understood to be included in later declarations of faith and was never repealed. It is the great-great-grandparent of the 7 principles of the Unitarian Universalist Association. The building that today houses the Universalist Heritage Center was built with donations from Universalists across the country to commemorate the Winchester Profession after the original meeting house was lost to fire.
Though Universalists would adopt other, more modern-sounding declarations of faith in later years, the Winchester Profession remains a good introduction to their unique point of view. It begins, "We believe that the Holy Scriptures of the Old and New Testaments contain a revelation and of the duty, interest, and of mankind." Within this endorsement of the Bible, typical of the time, we find 2 crucial words signifying something new. One of these words is the smallest one, A. We believe that the Holy Scriptures of the Old and New Testaments contain a revelation, not the unique revelation, but a revelation, one revelation among many. The tradition were potentially of value as well.
This openness to insights from other religions led some Universalists in the 20th century to symbolize Universalism by an off-center cross in an unbroken circle. The circle represents unified humanity as only one, a Christian, expression for other religious points of view. Crucial word is inconspicuous too, contain. The Holy Scriptures contain The Bible itself is not a revelation. It contains a revelation. Some parts of the Bible are religiously important, but other parts are not. How can these parts be distinguished? By people using their hearts and minds. In the final analysis, each person is his or her own religious authority. Confession continues, we believe that there is one God whose nature is love. Universalists adopted the New Testament from the first letter of John as their key theological concept.
In their homes, they sewed it into samplers that were hung in the parlor. In their churches, pulpits, and carved it into chancel tables. These three simple and powerful words are widely used today. This loving God, Universalists believed, would somehow find a way to save all people, the whole family of humankind. Universalists believe that everyone in heaven. This belief, which theologians call universal salvation, is what gave Universalists their name. They believed God's love was universal, embracing everyone.
Many were scandalized by this. They asked, without the threat of eternal hellfire, why should people be good? In several states, Universalists were barred from serving on juries or testifying as witnesses. It was presumed that a Universalist would have no motive.
Multitudes who embrace these doctrines embrace them because they are so congenial with the debased and perverted feelings of their corrupted and depraved hearts.
Universalists repel originality. People should be good and do good, they said, because God has created human nature so that we find it religiously fulfilling to so conduct our lives. Doing good is how to be happy in this life, the natural result of our fundamental humanness.
Hosea Ballou illustrates that attitude. One day a Baptist circuit rider, Universalist didn't believe in eternal hellfire, said to Hosea Ballou, then a Universalist circuit rider, "Why, if I were a Universalist, I could knock you over the head and have nothing to worry about." "If you were a Universalist," replied Ballou, "the thought would never occur to you."
To the Winchester Profession was a so-called Liberty Clause, affirming the freedom of Universalist churches to add their own particular beliefs to the denominational profession. In later declarations of faith, Universalists enlarged this Liberty Clause until it eventually affirmed complete for every individual. Today, Universalism is sometimes confused with Unitarianism because in 1961, the two denominations were consolidated into the Unitarian Universalist, many decades of parallel development. It's useful to note some historical the two groups. American Universalism as an organized body was founded in 1793 as an association of congregations. The American Unitarian Association was founded in 1825, mostly as a publishing and educational organization for the Unitarians. Universalism was a more populist movement, while Unitarianism was a heresy within the congregational churches that formed the New England establishment.
Universalism developed in the hill country of central New England, an area that was then the frontier. Unitarianism developed in lawrence around Boston. Universalists were, by and large, from a less privileged social class than Unitarians. Hosea Ballou, who was the principal Universalist leader for more than 40 years, was born in New Hampshire and had less than 2 years' formal education.
William Ellery Channing, his Unitarian counterpart, was born into an aristocratic family in Newport, Rhode Island, and was educated at Harvard.
Universalism developed among the classic 1770 story of a New Jersey farmer, Thomas Potter, meeting the Universalist lay preacher from England, John Murray, illustrates the readiness of ordinary people to embrace universal salvation.
American Unitarianism originated in Massachusetts, primarily among Harvard-educated clergy. The selection of Henry Ware Sr. as a Harvard professor of divinity sparked the controversy between the liberal Unitarians and conservative Congregationalists in the early 19th century.
The first Universalists were come-outers, who walked out of their home congregations and started new liberal congregations. This parallels the experience of many Unitarian Universalists today.
The first Unitarians tended to be stay-inners whose congregations were gradually guided in a liberal direction.
Universalists had to build their own meeting houses.
Buildings that had been constructed by the town and were maintained at public expense.
While both religious groups championed the use of reason and individual freedom of belief, their theological viewpoints had different perspectives. Thomas Starr King, first a Universalist and then a Unitarian minister, quoted a Universalist minister describing those differences. The Universalist believes that God is too good to damn us forever. You are too good to be damned. This referred to the Unitarians' higher estimation of human nature, with their doctrine of salvation by character, while Universalists concentrated on God's love for humanity. Hosea Ballou expressed the Universalist view provocatively: salvation irrespective of character. Salvation was not so much earned as it was a gift from a loving God.
In the 19th, they expressed their faith without using the term salvation. They said, "We avow our faith in the supreme worth of every human personality." This is the origin of the first Unitarian Universalist principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. The spirituality expressed in the seventh Unitarian Universalist principle is also solidly grounded in the experience of the early Universalists, many of whom struggled to scratch out a living on the frontier and experienced nature as an all-powerful reality on which they were totally dependent.
While Unitarians have a higher historical profile in early American reform movements, Universalists also were pioneers in many areas. Consider, for example, the issue of anti-slavery. The Unitarian minister William Ellery Channing was called a reluctant radical for his early hesitancy to speak against slavery. There is evidence that he began preaching about slavery as early as 1826. However, his sermons were often not well received by his congregation, many of whom were textile mill owners whose business interests depended on cheap Southern cotton made possible by slave labor. In 1790, Universalists adopted an anti-slavery statement composed by Declaration of Independence signer Dr. Benjamin Rush, which was adopted in 1794 by New England Universalists meeting in Oxford, Massachusetts. The Universalists were the second denomination in the nation to oppose slavery, the Quakers being the first. The Unitarian denomination never went on record as opposing slavery.
Another example of Universalist progressivism is the ordination of women. The ordination of Olympia Brown to the Universalist ministry in 1863 by the St. Lawrence Universalist Association marked the first time in America that a woman was ordained by a denominational body. Unitarianism spread slowly, mostly to cities, as transplanted Northeasterners brought their religion with them. Universalism spread rapidly, not only to cities but to rural areas as well, carried by saddlebag preachers eager to spread the good news. Universalists founded schools and colleges, including what are now the California Institute of Technology, the University of Akron, St. Lawrence University, and Tufts University. During the 19th century, Universalists grew to be America's sixth largest denomination, many times larger than the Unitarian denomination.
But by the mid-20th century, Universalists had shrunk to a relatively tiny denomination, ready for consolidation with the larger American Unitarian Association. One reason for Universalism's decline was that its distinctiveness was blurred when other denominations began to downplay hellfire and emphasize God's love.
Hell is the ultimate consequence of sin itself. Rather than a place, hell indicates the state of those who freely and definitively separate themselves from God, the source of all life and joy.
Another reason for Universalism's decline had to do with Universalists' fear of centralized authority. In 1792, Universalists in Newport, Rhode Island, were reported to be reluctant even to meet with each other for Sunday worship, for fear of the ecclesiastical structure which they felt would inevitably follow from holding regular meetings. To the very end of its independent existence, the Universalist denomination never allowed its national organization to have significant authority.
Yet another reason for Universalist decline was that as Universalists made their way up the socio-economic ladder, they de-emphasized the most radical parts of their message in order to nations. Like the Unitarians before them, they began to speak of salvation as more a matter of character development than a loving God's unconditional gift to every person. Universalism seemed to have lost its prophetic edge. Universalism experienced a theological rebirth in the decades flanking World War II. A new declaration of faith incorporated humanist values, and a new generation of leaders reconnected Universalism to its radical roots.
When the Universalist Church of America and the American Unitarian Association Con 61, the more prominent Unitarian name came to be the one most often used. Unitarian Universalist was shortened to Unitarian by many people. As a theology with a broad appeal in an increasingly interfaith, multicultural world has increased acceptance. It plays a prominent role in theological discussions in seminaries and in parishes.
To our children in 2003 AD, when you, our great-grandchildren, shall enter the dawn of 2003, do not forget the parents' names herein inscribed, whose were departed, whose bodies sleep in the dust, but whose spirits have returned to their God. We have done our best for you, and believe that during 1903, we firmly laid the foundation which our fathers laid in 1803. We charge you, who will be the supporters of the dear Winchester Church, to never fail to keep alive the sacred fires of our faith.
People of Universalist heritage, as well as those who have come to a new appreciation of the power of Universalism in history and theology, are reinvigorating that tradition. Eager to maintain a connection with Universalism's spiritual task, they reinterpret the Universalist message for a new generation. They see the importance of applying Universalist perspectives to current problems.
The Universalist Heritage Foundation has recently formed to keep alive both the heritage of Universalism and its message, which is richly relevant to today's spirit. Its mission is to celebrate and preserve the rich legacy of the Universalist faith, to educate future generations in the Universalist tradition, and to continue to put forth the Universalist message as an agent of hope for a fractured world.
A Universalist Heritage Center is being developed in this handsome building in Winchester, New Hampshire, site of the adoption of the defining 1803 WNC. Through the generosity of several donors, the Universalist Heritage Foundation was able to purchase the building. However, to maintain it and develop a program will require considerable additional funding.
If you would like to support this project, please contact the Universalist Heritage Foundation at P.O. Box 6441, Nashua, New Hampshire, 03063-6441 or Universalist Heritage Foundation at gmail.com.
As poet Edwin Markham said after worshiping at the Church of the Divine Paternity, that's now Fourth Universalist Church, he drew a circle that shut me out. Heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle that took him in.
Our Universalist heritage that we've just heard about has roots in American Universalism and the belief in a gentle and loving God and in the dignity and worth spread across the country. Itinerant Universalist preachers occasionally came to Western North Carolina mountains even before the Civil War. James Anderson Inman was recognized as a Universalist preacher as early as 1859. Inman joined the Confederate Army in his mid-30s. At the end of the Civil War, he renounced his Confederate citizenship and pledged an oath to the Union. He moved from his detention in Chicago to Boston, where he worked as a cooper and contractor while studying Universalism, turning south to reunite with fulfill his dream of building a Universalist church. As the interest in the church was picking up, on July 23rd, 1868, the first Universalist congregation was organized in Haywood County after a traveling preacher converted a handful of citizens. Later, he ordained James Anderson Inman at the age of 42. In 1897, the Universalist State Conference of North Carolina pledged to honor James Anderson Inman. Inman donated much of the construction funds and did most of the construction at the age of 77. The chapel was dedicated in 1903. In addition to being a minister, at a post office, a grist mill, a blacksmith shop, and a farm. Inman died following 43 years in 1912. In 1912, Reverend Hannah Jewett Powell from the Universalist Women's National Missionary Association was sent as a missionary to Inman Chapel. With the enthusiasm of the congregation and the support of the association, they built Friendly House. From its beginning, challenged its members to reach out and embrace people whom society often marginalized. Seeds of social activism in Haywood County began with a that included many firsts for the county and for the state. A preschool training program, first free public health clinic, first free adult education program, a literacy library, a lending library, a ministry to African American sawmill workers at Sunburst Logging Community. After Reverend Powell's 20-year ministry, the WNMA returned the chapel and Friendly House to the Inman family. In 1961, the Universalists merged with the Unitarians to become the Unitarian Universalist Church. In 1969, a congregation was established in Asheville. Our fellowship was established in 1972, almost 50 years. More recently, the best-selling novel and movie Cold Mountain has renewed interest in. The author Charles Fraser is the great-great-grandson of James Anderson Inman. The chapel is referenced as where fictionalized hero Pinckney Inman met his true love, Ada. Inman Chapel has undergone restoration and is used by family for homecoming gatherings. There is an historical marker southwest of Canton. A number of years ago, the UU Christian Fellowship held its convocation at the mountain and visited the chapel to hear about this history. To these early Universalists in our beloved Blue Ridge Mountains, we thank you for inspiring and empowering us to seek and follow our common call. Our closing hymn is number 121, We'll Build a Land.
Where the oil of gladness dissolves all
Our closing words are from Eric Williams. We all emerge from, dwell within, are transformed by, and called back to love. May your mind be humbled, may your heart grow hopeful by it. May you be sustained by this love always. Our chalice extinguishing words. Accept the truest form of faithful living. For truth is our constant star. We pledge our hearts, minds, and hands to challenge injustice with courage, to find hope in times of fear, and to live out our Unitarian Universalism every day as a beloved community. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all that is sacred in life. When we are together, we circle our round sanctuary and join hands for our closing circle and covenant. For now, those in the sanctuary may choose to join hands, while those of us on Zoom will join you in spirit as we recite our covenant. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and community is its goal. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So may it be. We now finish our recording and pause to move to joys and concerns and community conversation time.